the dilemma of our failing education system, and it's been going on for years. I've been following it for about 40, 50 years now, actually longer, but it all started with my education, which was a very expensive prep school education that I thought was really stupid. So the day after I graduated, I said, I got to figure out what the heck is wrong with this whole system. If my most expensive elite education is the best there is in a prep school, what must public education be like? So I set out on a lifetime journey to solve the dilemma in 3 ways. First, I wanted to understand what it is schools actually do and why they do it. And secondly, I wanted to understand more about education reform and all the attempts trying to solve its problems. The problems of what's often called an 18th century system of public education. So I'm not the first to say that, so you won't find anybody has any respect for our schools. I don't think so. So the second one was trying to figure out why nothing changes. In spite of all these good ideas, and I got involved in a lot of education reform initiative experiments, both in public schools and private schools, alternative schools, and done a lot of reading. My library back there, all the books that are accumulated over the years of why our schools fail and the latest idea and how our schools can be saved and all this stuff. And so, you go around the barn so many times, after a while you meet yourself coming the other way and you say, wait a minute, this is really pretty simple. This very seemingly complicated topic, the education of children, is pretty simple. But, so I says, okay, if it's simple, then let's find out exactly what our schools do and why they do them. So I came up with 7 assumptions our entire system of education makes about the nature of children and how they learn. And I figured if I can get that down, then maybe it'll all seem very simple and plain. Well, along the way, I discovered that I did one after the other, and at first I had 2, and then 5, and finally ended up with 7. Over the last, I've been developing about 20 years, this theory, but I discovered that all 7 are false. What's that about? I didn't go out looking for the false assumptions, I just went by looking for the basic fundamental assumptions. Now, any business industry, startup industry, has to, as part of its business plan, has to make a set of assumptions about its customer base and what they want and what they need and what they can afford and all that. And then around that, it shapes its, designs its products and its services and its means of going to market. But if you had a business that all 7 of them are false, what the hell are you going to do? How long could the business last? Well, the business, the industry, the public education industry, and believe me, it is an industry, a $580 billion industry. What the heck can you do when they're all false? Are you going to get any customers? Well, if you're that school, if you're going to be if you're in the public education business, you haven't got any competitors. Your customers are trapped. they have to buy from you. It's the only place they can go to get it. And so it can go on forever. It just talk about too big to fail. It's too critical to fail. Well, it does fail. We all know it fails, but so I'll get into the 7 assumptions. Now, you had to have watched the first video to understand how this thing works. Now, these are 7 very simple statements. I'm going to go through the numbers here. You will find that some of them are pretty foolish. And don't think I'm trying to be funny here, because this is reality. Now, I call them invisible assumptions because you won't see them written anyplace. I wrote them. I created them out of thin air. They just assume that it's what everybody does. And so I said, okay, if everybody's doing it, let's write it down what they're doing. So that's what I did. So, once again, I warn you now, these are pretty stupid. Some of these assumptions are pretty stupid, and that's really the point. And I question whether any educator believes any of them. So here's number 1. Children don't like to learn. Well, I guess the question is, if they do like to learn, why are we making them learn what it is we want them to learn and giving them no choice in the matter? We're making them learn. If they did like to learn, you wouldn't have to make them. Number 2, children of the same age are basically all the same. All you have to do is go to any classroom and you'll see they're all within a year of each other, give or take, very few exceptions. So that has to mean that they must be all basically the same, because they're all in the same classroom being taught a standard curriculum by the teacher. Number 3, being interested is not a necessary prerequisite for being taught. Well, of course, the skill of teaching is trying to interest students in learning what it is you're scheduled to teach them. What is the lesson plan of the day? It's what it is, and it doesn't matter whether they're interested or not. And the bottom line, number 4, for the most part, what is taught is learned. Well, the curriculum by its very nature is a time content continuum, as I call it. It's for a whole year it's written out. You can see it in a textbook. Very often textbooks form the basis of the curriculum. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, whether it's a English or science textbook or whatever it is, it's all. You don't jump around. You go. You can tell what day it is by what chapter you're on. So it has to be assumed that everybody's learning at the most part is being being learned, because why keep going and keep jumping ahead? It's no mystery that learning is a linking new information to old information that's already learned. I mean, you've got to have something to tie it all together. Number 5, education is a highly specialized trade, best performed by professionals and confined to schools. Well, are there any people teaching in schools that aren't teachers? They are licensed by the state to be teachers. They have gone to teachers' college, which is, in many states, is kind of the butt of jokes of, if you can't get in any other college, well, you can always go to a teacher's college. And there's books written about how sorry the whole state of affairs are in our teachers' colleges in the nation, and confined to schools. When do you ever see the kids get out of the building? If they do, they go straight to a school bus, the door's locked, and they drive the school bus down to the science museum or something, and they bring them back and make sure they get back into school and close the doors quick. At the same time, do you see any non-professionals in it? No. I tried volunteering in 6 high schools in our region here. I've been working with kids for years. I have a lot to offer, and I thought, well, maybe they want somebody to do a AP course on being an entrepreneur or being an architect or what it's like to be a contractor or something like that. Oh, everything which I've done. And but nobody, not one school was the least bit interested. They couldn't, most of them couldn't understand, what are you doing here? What excuse me? Yes, you want what? And I said, yeah. And they said, we don't have any volunteers. And I said, oh, whoops. Sorry, at that point, that was about 10, 15 years ago, I guess I hadn't really realized that amateurs, non-professional educators, do not work in schools. They're except in very rare instances, maybe have teachers' conferences where all the parents come in and get 5 minutes for each teacher and they go down the hall. But other than that, no, they're kept out. Number 6, the opinion and ideas of the students are unimportant. Well, they're unimportant because we've got no time for any new ideas you have. Curriculum is a very unforgiving production process. And the more inefficient it gets, and the more dysfunctional the operation becomes, the less alternative ideas and are allowed. There's no time left for it. Opinions. You hear all this talk about who are the best teachers, how to judge them, and what is the criteria we ought to measure teachers by. There are all kinds of things about all the courses they've taken, and maybe they've been evaluated by the principal comes in and sits in the back of the room and just like gives grades them as to how effective they seem to be in keeping the lid on in the classroom. And but the one thing they never do is ask the students what they think of their teachers. They're smart in doing so because kids have a way of being very frank and to the point. You know, I'm trying to be mean, and they'd say, oh, no, Mrs. So-and-so's a dope. And she's been around schools for years, but I've spent more of my time in the outside world and the real world of children, and they talk about their teachers. And I've been seen teachers in action, and I was just appalled that they were. I didn't even know why they were teachers. But and I've known some really crackerjack teachers that have managed to go through this very dysfunctional system and come out with some sort of success in educating their children, and teachers that are truly loved by their children because they're by their students because they really care about them. And the last one is children cannot be trusted or allowed to make decisions for themselves. Well, duh, when you got a standard curriculum, which I call the teaching of a standard curriculum in unison to same-age students according to a fixed schedule and promoting them automatically. And I also refer to it as the weapons of mass instruction. I didn't think that up, but I use it because I think it's a great label for standard curriculum. So that's the 7. You'll find them in my book. Education is Viewed from Another Planet. Part 1 is a small book that I have available. That has this all listed in it, and you can copy them down off the screen here as I go along. And you wonder why our schools don't work. In my work and in my discussions with people, I use these 7 assumptions all the time. I don't even mention them, but I use them as paraphrases, like so you can say, what you're really saying is children don't like to learn, right? And they make great paraphrases for getting right down to the issue of what people are talking about. So if you're having a meeting, school board meeting, or just a coffee clutch, throw this out, put this up on the board, and you're going to have one heck of an evening of discussion. I would like to think of my theory of the 7 invisible assumptions as a game changer, because I think we really need to change the game. Not to win the game, because it can't be won, but to create a whole new game. I don't think our schools can be fixed. I don't believe in education reform. The key, the other thing about these 7 assumptions is that I discovered that all the education reform initiatives that have come down through the years and applied in public schools and private schools and alternative schools and even other educational programs like for at-risk kids and all those kind of things, none of them have survived. I've got old books back there that were printed 10 and 20 years ago that talk about all these great ideas, but you never hear about them now. There is no conversation in my magazine. In fact, that stack of magazines there, Education Week magazine. Every week I get this magazine that I pour myself through and thinking, oh my God, what are they thinking? Why are they being so... and getting nowhere. You won't find any good ideas there. You won't find any optimism. They're all tweaks, trying to fiddle with it here and fiddle with it there, and maybe we can get it to work well. The fact is that all the good ideas that have come down the pike, alternative education systems, inventions, ideas, and inspirations, and I've seen some really great ones, never survived, because every one of them tried to correct one of those 7 assumptions. Now, those 7 assumptions are the basic structure, are the foundation of what it is our schools do. All our schools, from preschool to, I dare say, all the way through college, certainly. It's curriculum driven, and it's mass instruction. So every one of these innovations and great ideas died, and I've never heard them since. They would pop up and they'd be in the papers. Oh, this great new school is this great new idea, and then you never read about it again. So oh, here it is again. It pops up again, but every time it's defeated, it dies. It's ignored. It's shunned. It's pushed aside because it breaks into this teaching of a standard curriculum in unison to same-age students according to a fixed schedule and promoting them automatically. That's what it does, and you can't stop it. Once they change one of them, once you assume that for the most part what is taught is not learned, if you try to plug that in, then why standard curriculum falls apart. If you say, well, children really do like to learn, then you say, well, okay, great idea, but what are they going to learn? And they're all different. The number 2 children of the same age are basically all the same. Well, no, we know they're not the same. Well, you find me one single teacher that will tell you that is actually true. It has to be, it's assumed to be true. Otherwise, how you can't have a teacher for every student. It's a trap. It's a dead end. And education reform is a dead end. In fact, you will find that everything that is billed in the magazines and the articles, there's a lot of stuff in all the magazines and news magazines and on TV, and In fact, at 8 o'clock here, there's going to be another program of how to save our school on CNN. And it pains me to see it because it's like... And I've mailed my book out to a number of places that I hope maybe it would just consider it from a moment, would open the book and read what it says. And I've found one response. I haven't gotten one response. And I know I didn't expect to get any response. But I want to be able to send it out and say, well, I tried, you know. So the solution is not an education reform. Our schools cannot be fixed. How can you say what somebody can't do? Well, I guess you can say it if they keep trying and they don't do it. I guess you can conclude that they are not able to do it. They've been trying 30 years and they keep failing. Okay, well, let's make that assumption and move on. Well, the solution is the videos that follow. You're going to find the solutions as I see them. And they have nothing to do with our schools, our present schools. If you want to take these, if you're an educator and an idealist and determined to slay this monster, these weapons of mass destruction, of mass instruction, you can have a shot at the 7 assumptions and, you know, go pick one and see if you can fix it. But you'll find that you can't, because they're all the basic structure of how our schools work, our whole system of education works. And you pull out one, the whole thing comes down. So the next video is about the 7 challenges. And from that, on a theoretical level, I lay out 7 things that we're going to have to do to arrive at the solution. And none of them have anything to do with schools as we know them today. So that'll be the next video. You're welcome to follow. And then beyond that, you will see videos that have a description of the ideal school in a general sense, and then a brief description of my own schools, EdSelf, that's what I call them, EdSelf, System of Education. It's registered and all that, so don't try taking the name. I own it. But I've solved it. I've been working 40 years writing this book, and that is the name of the book, is Education is Viewed from Another Planet, Part 2, which is a much larger book and has a description of these schools. But you can't see them. Because I invented it. I've never been paid a dime, and I hope somehow I'm going to make a living off of this thing. Luckily, it's not my day job. So that someday somebody's going to come with a couple of million, $3-4 million to set up the next big thing, which is an entirely new system of education. I would say this isn't particular to our country. Schools all around the world have the same 7 assumptions. It's very strange. This whole thing is bizarre. Sometimes I wake up in the morning in the middle of the night and thinking, no, it can't be this simple. Am I the only one that knows this is bizarre? Am I the only one that knows why No, I'm not. Everybody, there's thousands, millions of people that know what's wrong with our schools. I've just written it down. I've formalized it. I've made the 7 assumptions and the 7 challenges and EdSelf, and that's the solution. So let me know if you know somebody with a couple of $1 million that's ready to set to something, get going. I'd love to hear from them. But if you're an educator or you're in a think tank, or you're in some university, don't call me. I can't help you. We don't even speak the same language, so I think I envision where the future, the patrons of the future of education will be the entertainment industry, the music and cinema industry. Those are the people that can think big thoughts like this, and imagine whole, seemingly fantastic solutions, and put it all together and say, here it is. I hope I can find somebody, and I appreciate your watching. And there's there's a number of videos that go after this that elaborate in very different directions of what I'm talking about. So thanks a lot for your patience.